Good evening, morning, afternoon, I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a bit of an odd video. We don't normally do this sort of thing, quite frankly. We're normally a Star Trek channel, but the simple fact of the matter is I am also a pretty avid 40K player. For those of you who don't know, Warhammer 40K is a tabletop war game where we build, paint, and play with little 28mm, well, sort of, models and shoot them around the field. I play the Imperial Guard, which I believe is the most awesome faction because, you know, humans in an era of demons and technologically advanced aliens, and we still kick butt and take names. But yeah, just the other night, Chapter Approved dropped. Chapter Approved is a list of balance changes that are happening to the game that'll probably happen every single year, just so GW can keep the pulse of what's going on and make sure the changes happen relatively frequently. And at first I was really excited for this because we heard all about points changes and cost drops and maybe Forge World updates. And, well, the reason I'm making this video is because things did not go that way. So, if you're not interested in this content at all, that's totally understandable. Don't worry, this is not taking the place of a normal video. That will still go up at the normal time as always. However, if you are a 40K player, we're going to dive a little bit into the guard side of the street. So, let's get started. So immediately we pop over here and we see that Astra Militarum units and war gear, this is for the Codex group. Astropaths are now 30 points. They were 15. They have doubled in price. Now, some people have been saying lately that, hey, Astropaths, they are way undercosted. They provide you taking away the enemy's ability to take cover, as well as the ability to deny the witch on a full 2d6 dice rather than just the 1d6 from the index, as well as the fact that they can now cast their power at 2d6, but their smite is still 1d6. The thing is, most people were thinking that the price would go up because smite spam and all psychers would go up. The problem is the Astropath doesn't smite at 2d6, it's a 1d6, so you have a 1/3 chance of doing 1d3 mortal wounds with the smite power. I can sort of see an argument for an increase in price, but doubling it is just absolutely ridiculous. The unit is not worth quite that much. And for just a few points more, you may as well get the Primaris Psyker, who will be able to smite at full power. So our cheap elite filler at this point is now gone. And hey, you may as well break out those Crusaders because, well, yeah, going 3 Astropaths to fill out an entire elite choice for a brigade may not be quite so worth it anymore, simply because they're not super cheap. Don't get me wrong, Astropaths are still great, but this is a painful change. I would have expected no more than 5 to 10 points of an increase, but 15 points going up is just ouch. Conscripts are now 4 points. This is beyond stupid. So conscripts have been nerfed into the ground again and again and again. The initial nerf was they went down from being able to be units of 20 to 50 to 20 to 30. Then they could only take orders on a 4-up. Then the Commissar got utterly gutted, and now they cost the same as our regular infantry, who have +3 leadership, +1 weapon skill, +1 ballista skill? What? This just doesn't make sense. And it's one of the reasons why I was so sure this had to be a hoax. But there's been no response so far from GW. Maybe by the time this video has gone up, there will be. But if this is the case, what and why? There just doesn't seem to be any reason for a 4-point conscript when he's clearly inferior to just the regular infantry. Manticores went up. Primaris Psychers went up. However, the Primaris Psyker 4-staff, if you look down just one category, has gone down in points. So net increase is only about 6 points. It's not horrific, it's not terrible. It does make the Primaris Psyker a better option than it was in the previous sort of equation you had to come up with when building your army, where it was Astropath and Primaris Psyker, and Astropath was 15 points and the Primaris Psyker was 40. But still, it kind of hurts. I understand this one a little bit better because the Primaris Psyker has 2 powers. He can spam smite quite easily. I'm not so broken up about this one. Ratlings went up 2 points. Again, I can understand this one. It's a unit of 5 to 10. They all have sniper weapons. Granted, the sniper weapon is basically just a bolter that can potentially deal mortal wounds. I'm assuming this is just to attack the the idea of being able to do mortal wounds. They want to take these off the table as much as possible because I think they've realized that, wow, that's really a powerful ability in this game. 7 points, they've gone up. Rattlings were never super competitive. They were always a fun slot filler, but it is a little bit much given that they're a toughness 2 unit and they move slowly. Yeah, they can move after they shoot, but it doesn't really seem worth it. Thoraxes, Thorax Primes, and Wyverns went up. The Wyvern... Why? Does anybody care about that? I mean, I have never run into a player who was actually running Wyverns in any sort of competitive list. They weren't worth it compared to other options like a Basilisk. And to increase their points... Now, here's the one fun and good thing that came out of this. Autocannons went down. So autocannons were 15 points. They are now 12, which is... I'm not going to say quite competitive yet. Still, they're competing with the 8-point heavy bolter, which is everything the autocannon does at -1 wound and -2 strength. But it's 8 points compared to 12. Do you really get that much more utility by spending 4 more points against essentially just Terminators? It's the thing that really lets an autocannon down is the -1, is the fact that it's only -1 AP. It just has a really hard time competing at that point. Maybe you can make an argument for it now. I mean, it is only 4 points now, so that's not super terrible. And if you've been using autocannons in your army anyway, because, you know, last edition and previous editions, autocannon all the way, that was the rule. So if you've been using a lot of them because you got a lot of them, hey, this is a great change for you. You've picked up 3 points off of every autocannon. So, goes closer to making it a better weapon. I wouldn't have gone this route. I probably would have tried to see if we couldn't shoehorn in AP -2. Yeah, I get that puts it at mini battle cannon range, but still, it doesn't feel super competitive just because the 3-point heavy, or the 8-point heavy bolter. I'd still go that way purely because more shots. The fact that in the guard, the more shots we put out, the more damage we deal. The autocannon is too much of a coin flip for me personally, but hey, if you've been using autocannons, this is a fantastic change. The Forestaff, as I said, went down, so it's a little bit cheaper. Before it was, and I'm checking my codex right here super quick, that is the ranged section. Telepathic Staff, nope, that's not what it, Forestaff was 12 points, it's now down to 8 points. So, yeah, that's pretty nice. When combined with the change to the Primera Psyker, which is now, what was it? Sorry, 38 points, which is up from the 32. It's really not so bad. It's not as horrible as it could have been. Actually, I think I said that wrong. Primera Psyker was 28. So, yeah, it's not as horrible as it could have been. Still not happy about it, but I had been steadily taking Primera Psykers out of my list in favor of Astropaths. They may see a slight resurgence. I'm not sure. In my list, I'm generally trying to scrounge points from anywhere I can get to put them into flyers, because I'm a big flyer player. But it's not terrible. The Meltagun change is baffling. Actually, no, just briefly, Hotshot Volley Guns went up 1 point. I can kind of see why I liked them at 6 points. I thought they were really, really cool at 6 points, and ever since the Plasma change, if I played Skyans, they were given Hotshot Volley Guns. Yes, I get it. It's not optimal, but it was fun. And I like the idea of having a rapid-fire machine gun, basically, that you can add to a squad in the special weapon slot. It's one of the reasons why I really wish that the Heavy Stubber from the Krieg list would come over to Normal Guard list, being a special weapon, because I like that sort of concept. But that's never going to happen. Again, the Meltagun change. This just makes no sense. So the Meltagun got the Plasma Gun treatment. Meltaguns were 12 points before, now they're 12 points on a Ballistic Skill 4 model and 17 points on a Ballistic Skill 3 model. I don't get why. I understood the Plasma change. Plasma was rife amongst anybody who wanted to use it, and it was 7 points, so it was the cheapest thing you could possibly get for a ton of flexibility and firepower, and so taking it made all the sense in the world. But I don't know anybody who's been spamming Meltaguns on Ballistic Skill 3 models. First of all, veterans aren't all that popular in this edition, so it's clearly targeted at Skyans. But if you're taking Skyans, you probably wouldn't be taking the Meltagun anyway, because the Plasma Gun just gave you so much more flexibility. You couldn't deep strike into Meltagun range anyway, and if you were Vestroyans and using them on something, it didn't matter anyway, because the 6-inch increase in range didn't apply to you. So why they changed melta guns to be 5 points more expensive on ballistic skill models, just it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Power Fist went down 2 points. That's okay. Still not going to use the damn thing. Power Fist with the -1 to AP, just it's kind of stupid. I mean, maybe if you play catechins, but if you play catechins and you're taking a power weapon at all, you're either taking the power sword or the power axe. The power axe giving you an additional point of strength and -2 AP, which is hilariously strong because it puts you at strength 5 AP -2. Basically, you're more powerful than a Punisher cannon at that point. So why you I get that it allows you to dent vehicles, but the number of times you're going to be sending a company commander, which really is kind of the lowest form of unit that you can send out there with a power fist, at a vehicle or a tank or some kind, it just isn't going to happen all that often. And if you are trying to do that sort of thing, a power maul is generally going to get you further places because it's going to be cheaper, not much cheap, well, half the price of that, and it's just going to be more useful in general combat because you're going to have a better weapon skill, because the power fist is a -1 to weapon skill because it's a bulky weapon. The Thorax Gatling Cannon went up 2 points. I understand that completely. Not broken up about that at all. The Thorax Gatling Cannon is hilariously strong, and we've seen it like in the Nova list, where spamming this thing was a solution, and it is incredibly powerful. I get that. I understand this. This is not a change that I am broken up on at all, and at the end of the day, it was only 2 points. So, The Tempestus Command Rod now costs points. Before, it was free. You replaced your Hotshot Las pistol with it, and you got yourself an extra order on a Tempestor. 5 points is a little steep for that. I mean, it is just it's a single order. Yeah, I get orders can be super incredibly powerful. 5 points, I'm not horribly broken up about this. I kind of understand this. I don't quite think it's plasma pistol level, but as I say that, it can give, a group of, Tempestor Command Squad plasma gun dropping people an additional reroll 1s, which makes it much safer to be rapid firing that overcharged plasma. This may not be super horrible, I get it, but maybe it's just the fact that I'm so salty about the rest of what came out that this really annoys me too. 5 points may not be too much. If we're 100% honest with it, it's not horrific. Vanquisher battle cannons dropped 5 points. They're now 20, which, okay, you didn't address the problem with the gun. It is a one-shot gun, strength 8, AP -3, roll 2d6 damage and take the highest. For one shot, especially with grinding advance, this is just not worth it. It's matching the battle cannon now. It's actually a little bit cheaper than the battle cannon because the battle cannon is 22 points. But it's still not any comparison to the 2d6 shots that you get with grinding advance using a battle cannon. I do not see the point of using this weapon. It just doesn't seem to make any sense for why anybody would want to bring it. I thought maybe with Pask you might be able to make it work, but at the end of the day, you're just sacrificing so much so much damage generation with it. I mean, the maximum damage you can possibly deal with it is 12. The maximum damage you can deal with a battle cannon is 36. There's no comparison, especially if you're taking out a heavy support Russ or even a tank commander. Just the number of shots you put out with a normal battle cannon is so much better that even at this change, the Vanquisher cannon just doesn't make sense. It's a crappy gun, and it will never be fixed until at the very least it becomes D3. At D3, strength 9, AP -3, D6 damage, yeah, absolutely charge me 30 to 40 points for that gun. That would be fantastic. I would be willing to pay a premium for something like that. But where it stands right now, the gun is not ever going to be worth it until you drop its point down to like 15 to 10. Because that single shot, one shot that with a guard ballistic skill isn't reliable, and even with Pask, ordering yourself, it's hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, that kind of can be reliable. But at that point, why not take the las cannon turret? You're spending more for it, but you're going to put out a heck of a lot more damage. This just doesn't compare to the battle cannon. I'm sorry. The Vanquisher still hasn't been fixed. I don't anticipate it'll ever be fixed. And this just tells me once again that Games Workshop doesn't quite understand the problem with the gun. Moving on, we get to the Forge World section of the book. And again, we're only going to cover the guard because I play guard, I know guard, and yeah. So, I'm going to somewhat try and avoid going after my pet bugbears in this list immediately, because I am so very, very salty about them. And we'll try and go with other things. So the Armageddon Pattern Medusa is 115 points. That's up from 103. Is it worth it? You get an additional point of, what was it, toughness or something about that? I don't see the point. Armageddon Pattern vehicles didn't really come into play. Like, why would you do that? Yeah, it does. This is just another one of those baffling changes, and we're gonna have a lot of baffling changes in the Forge World section. Like this is just painful. But adding to that, the Artima Pattern Hellhound dropped to 73 points. It was 100. It has gone down 27 points, or 17 points. That is huge. Which I suppose makes sense. Basically, the normal Hellhound is roll 2d6. Strength 6, AP minus 1, 1 damage. The Artima Pattern Hellhound is roll 1d6, Strength 6, AP minus 1, 2 damage. So, yeah, I suppose this is nice. I mean, this dropping 17 points is really cool. And I think this now brings you in line or cheaper than the normal Hellhound. A normal Hellhound, the cheapest you can get it for is 101 because you need 8... Yeah, so 93 points for the normal one. So, hey, that's actually really nice. Would I use it? Probably not. Like I said, guard shot generation. Granted, the Hellhound automatically hits whatever it shoots, but there's so much more flexibility. If you find yourself running up against a lot of high wound, high toughness units, this is a fantastic change. And if you've been using Artima Pattern Hellhounds, congratulations. You've got a lot more points to spend on other things. The Avenger Strike Fighter. Okay, so we're getting into my pet bugbears. Like I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm a flyer player. I play flyers. My current before this thing came out list included 2 Thunderbolts and 2 Vultures with Punisher cannons. The Avenger Strike Fighter is now 150 points, up from 125. That is a lot. It's a 25-point increase. To put that in perspective, you have to take twin las cannons, or 2 las cannons, with an Avenger Strike Fighter. It's not a twin las cannon, it's 2 separate las cannons, which means you can multi-target, but you almost never will do that. So it's 190 points. Yeah, that's the price of my old Thunderbolt, before I add on, the wing-slotted weapons. So 190 points for an Avenger Strike Fighter. That is huge. It used to be 165. So, okay. Yeah. Why? Just nothing really changed. The Avenger Strike Fighter this edition is not fantastic. The Avenger Bolt Cannon is Strength 6, AP minus 2, Heavy 8, which is mediocre. It's not great at shooting infantry like the Punisher Cannon, which is Heavy 40. On the Vulture it is, because it's a twin Punisher Cannon. And it's not really great for taking out tanks, because it's Strength 6. Granted, it's great against elite infantry like, say, Death Guard units, or Terminators, because it's the AP minus 2 and the high strength, but I mean, it really does mirror the real-world A10, because it's not good against real tanks, but it does a pretty bang-up job against infantry and light vehicles. Is it worth 150 points, 190 once you bring its mandatory war gear? No. I mean, the only reason you'd bring it is because you like the plane. And granted, I do like the plane, but I haven't used it since last edition. Oh, boy. The Cyclops Demolition vehicle went up, and it went up 20 points. Now, I understand this. I 100% understand why this happened. The Cyclops Demolition vehicle generates mortal wounds. It generates a lot of mortal wounds, and it has been the dirty little secret of guard players. We like to drop these things in, especially if you play Elysians, and you basically blow up the universe, because these things explode in a massive detonation of hilarity. 60 points, that feels probably better. Honestly, it really does feel better. Am I happy about the change? Absolutely not. I am a guard player, but I understand where they're coming from on this one, simply because of the amount of firepower that it did. The Dominus Armored Siege Bombard has gone up 150 points. Is that worth it? No idea. I have never brought a Dominus Armored Siege Bombard, but 250 points does seem to be pretty steep. Now, maybe it's absolutely worth that amount. It could be. I mean, for all we know, that is an absolutely reasonable change. And I'm quickly doing a fast little check through the front of my Forge World to see if I can find it, because it's not necessarily ordered in proper alphabetical order, like Trojan support vehicles are before Artema pattern Hellhounds, Hades breaching drills, and the like, so it's not particularly easy to find things in this book, but I'm not seeing it right off the bat, so am I? Oh, nope, here it is. Okay, so it is a super heavy. We're looking at a movement of 10 inches, a ballistic skill of 4+, a weapon skill of 5, strength 8, toughness 8, 20 wounds. It can attack 3 times at full on its top tier. Leadership 8 and a 3+ save. Dominus Siege Bombard equipped with a triple Dominus Bombard and 2 heavy bolters. Dominus Bombard is, if it's stationary, heavy 3d6, strength 10, AP minus 3d6. This profile may only chose the... yeah. 250 points for that? I don't know. It doesn't quite feel like it. 450 points, that'll get you a Knight Errant. That'll get you a couple of Primarchs. How much is Mortarion? Isn't he like 404 points? Something like that? I don't know. 600 points definitely seems kind of steep for this. I mean, it's not particularly survivable. It's only got 20 wounds as opposed to 24, I think, on the Knight. It's only a 3-up save. So, yeah, this seems steep. This seems pretty darn steep, but this is a trend that we're noticing, and we will talk about it in a bit. Earthshaker Batteries are 115 points. They were 80. This I kind of understand. Now, maybe this is purely because I'm planning on going to Adepticon, and Adepticon, when they released their team battle rules, said that any Forge World model must be the Forge World model, and when I emailed them about it saying, hey, what if they don't make the model anymore? Well, the answer was, yeah, this rule is specifically designed to target the Earthshaker Battery. The thing about the Earthshaker Battery was that it's an Earthshaker cannon, so 2d6 shot generation, strength 9, AP minus 3, d3 damage, but it's immobile, and the Forge World version of immobile said that this unit may target things that are within 1 inch of it, and does not and anything within 1 inch of it does not prevent other people from targeting you. And this unit can also shoot out of being within 1 inch. So basically, if you assault this unit, you can't lock it down, and people can still blast you off of it. So that's a really strong ability. Now, somewhat balancing that is it's not a vehicle, which means it doesn't benefit from any of the doctrines. So if you're playing Catachin, it doesn't benefit from reroll one of your shot generation dice. If you are playing Cadian, it doesn't benefit from the fact that you get to reroll ones of your stationary. So it wasn't fantastic. So, but you know, it was 80 points. So super cheap way of getting a whole bunch of Earthshakers on the field. It's now up to 115. I can kind of understand this. It is a bit of an overreaction. I don't think it's quite worth that amount of points. I do think doctrines have made it a little less favorable, and also the fact that it's not made by Forge World and hasn't been made by Forge World in quite some time, meaning getting your hands on it is basically impossible unless you build your own from a Basilisk kit and making your own base. This is an overreaction. This is steep, but this is also part of a trend, which we will talk about in a bit. The Earthshaker Carriage. This is moronic. So, the Earthshaker Carriage was 75 points to start with. It's now 105. It went up 30 points. This is mind-boggling to me. 30 additional points. And then, because this is an artillery battery and is not actually, a vehicle, well, it is technically a vehicle. It does have the vehicle keyword. It has to be crewed by a gun crew, and you must pay for the gun crew. The gun crew uses basically the standard Imperial Guardsman price of 4 points, and it is a minimum size of 4. So it's not just 105 points, it's 105 points plus the 16 points of Guardsman you gotta drag along with it. This is, as you may imagine, inflating the price just a bit. That puts the price of an Earthshaker Carriage Battery up to a grand total of 121 points. This is stupid. The Basilisk is 108 points. The base gun itself is 100 points, and then you must bring a hull-mounted heavy bolter as your cheapest weapon option. You could also bring a heavy flamethrower, but that costs more. You'll have to bring the heavy bolter at the very least. Puts you at 108 points. Okay? You are paying 8 points more for less. For significantly less. For a, I would almost say, retarded amount less. So, I get that the Earthshaker Carriage Battery is tougher. I really do. It is toughness 7. It has 7 wounds, compared to toughness 6, 11 wounds. But it doesn't move. And the Earthshaker Carriage Battery has a 4-up save to a 3-up save. Why? Why does this thing cost more points? Why does it cost... How many points was it? 121 minus 108, so 21 minus 8. 12... 13 points. Why does it cost 13 points more if it has fewer wounds, a worse save, and should you be able to kill off the gunner crew, the Earthshaker Carriage automatically dies. Oh, also, your Earthshaker Carriage can't move. The +1 to toughness is not worth this crap. I mean, this is ridiculous. You're spending more than you would for an Armageddon pattern Medusa. The Armageddon pattern Medusa is toughness 7 also, and has 12 wounds and a 3-up save. The Armageddon pattern Basilisk is toughness 7, has 12 wounds and a 3-up save, and the armored pattern Basilisk is also 115 points. You're spending 121 for this thing. It makes absolutely no sense. The strength is higher, but it can't assault anything. So, what in the absolute hell is going on here? This makes no sense. This makes beyond no sense, and this is incredibly frustrating to have to look at this. The Gorgon Heavy Transporter, on the other hand, did go down 50 points, which makes sense. It was kind of hilarious. The Griffon Heavy Mortar is now 77 points, and it was a grand total of 70 points. So it's gone up 7 points. Again, this is not catastrophically huge. It is only 7 points, and it is on the Griffon Mortar, which quite frankly didn't get used quite nearly as much as you might think. But again, it's another price increase that doesn't quite make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Let's get to the other side of the page for what we can do, and we get to the Heavy Quad Launcher Battery. The Heavy Quad Launcher Battery is 73 points in Forge World. It's gone up to 85. To prevent all those people who were spamming this thing. Oh, by the way, you also have to bring a gun crew of at least 4 more, so you're actually spending 12 additional points. It's 97 points for this thing. 97 points for a heavy quad launcher. But why? It really that is the question that we were asking ourselves most often in this whole show. The quad mortar is not worth that much. It was barely worth it at the 73 point, where it was 85 points in total for the whole battery and guardsman crew. It was barely worth it then, and now this is beyond dumb, which is a lot of things. Now, to flip on that, the Hydra Battery is 75 points. That is way down. The Hydra Battery is 90 points in the actual Forge World book. They've dropped this thing 15 points. That is pretty huge. Yeah, that's really nice. If you really feel the need to take a whole bunch of Hydra batteries, which I frankly don't know why, you're saving yourself 15 points for every one that you take. Maybe this is to combat the absolute metric ton of we get to force you to take a -1 to hit spam that Eldar have brought out, where you can get -3 and potentially even -4 on a lot of units, which makes it impossible for the guard to actually hit them. So maybe it's a response to that, but if so, this is a really crappy unit to do it with. The Hydra autocannon is not that good for that role. I mean, there are other things. The Imperial Fortress walls are now 800 points. They were 400. Why? I totally get models embarked on this model have a 4-up invuln save. But really? So it can give up to 20 models a 4-up invuln. 800 points is not worth that. Now, maybe this is just a general trend about fortifications, because the Primaris Redoubt is, let's see if we can't quickly find it in here, went up by, really? The Primaris Redoubt went up 400 points. So maybe this is just an attack on fortifications, which I don't really mind so much. They don't feature all that much. They really are like terrain pieces at this point. I mean, Primaris Redoubts and Imperial Fortress Walls are just gigantic pieces of terrain that are put on a map. Nobody actually fields them in any kind of list. I can't think of most tournaments that would allow you to field a Primaris Redoubt. So this is not a huge deal by any stretch of the imagination, but still 800 points to give up to 20 infantry units in the Guard a 4-up invuln save. Now, I suppose that if you were to take, I don't know, Sisters of Battle or Astartes or something, this would be much more powerful, because now you're giving, you know, Space Marines with a Space Marine ballistic skill and a Space Marine gun a 4-up invuln, and that could make it very, very deadly. But I'm just viewing this as the general attack on fortifications. And why it's more expensive than a Primaris Redoubt, I have no idea. Because the Primaris Redoubt brings with it the Turbo Laser Destructor, which is a macro 2d3, strength 16, AP -3, 2d6 rolled. Any wound of a 6 made with this automatically inflicts an additional d3 mortal wounds on a target. So how in the hell is an Imperial Fortress Wall somehow better than that? Yeah, it's got double the wounds and an increase of 1 of the saves. But the Primaris Redoubt brings the ability to basically wipe out Titan-level foes. And the Imperial Fortress Wall is just a big wall. Yeah, not super pleased about this. I don't use fortifications anyway, but this is kind of dumb. Continuing and moving on. The Layman-Russ Annihilator got a 10-point buff. It's now 122, down from 132. That's good, because, well, Annihilators were kind of overpriced. The Layman-Russ Conqueror. In the Astra Militarum, point value is 110 points. It is now 112. This brings it, with the price of gun and hull-mounted heavy bolter that you have to take, up to 155 points. It is 3 points more than the traditional battle cannon Russ. Now, this is debatable, and I have debated with a couple of my friends on this. Personally, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it should be 3 points more. If anything, it should match the price or be cheaper. The Conqueror has always been the cheaper battle cannon option. It is half the range of a battle cannon, but its advantage always was that it also had a coaxial mounted Stormbolter. Any hits with this Stormbolter would then allow you, or I think it's any target that got shot at by the Stormbolter, you could then also re-roll your main cannon attacks against. This is a very powerful ability. But the Conqueror battle cannon only had a range of 48 compared to 72 off the main battle cannon, and the Stormbolter was a 24-inch range. So if you actually wanted to hit anything using that ability, you had to be within 24 inches of the enemy. In previous editions of the game, this is not so bad, since I don't think you could actually lock vehicles in close combat. In this edition of the game, getting that close to your enemy is a problem. Now, Vestroyans could make good use of a Conqueror, and if you're going to play Vestroyans, I actually kind of recommend you take the Conqueror, because that buffs that out to a 30-inch range, which is a lot better. I know, 6 inches actually does make a huge difference. A friend of mine, Mitch, he's saying that he would like to use it on Talarn tanks as well, because you're so mobile and active, you give the Talarn movement order, but then you also have the coaxial Stormbolter, so that you get to reroll attacks, and Talarn tanks outflank. So you're going to be within range of that gun anyway. I can see that argument. I still don't think it should be that expensive. I just do not think that it's quite worth that. Now, maybe it's just because I am a snob, and I think that all my tanks should be incredibly cheap. But at the end of the day, it's 3 points more. You get a coaxial Stormbolter, that's only worth 2 points. And then the reroll, but that's only at 24 inches, which is a fourth of the range of the main battle cannon. I don't think it's quite worth it. Now, I'll probably give it a shot in a couple of games just to see how it does, but it's kind of painful to look at. Alright, the Layman-Russ Stygius Vanquisher. Is that our next one? Yeah, Stygius Vanquisher is 160 points. That's down from 165. Excellent. That needs all the help it can get. The Lightning Strike Fighter. In previous editions, you might have seen a Lightning Strike Fighter. You may have also seen the recent model rework of the Lightning Strike Fighter. I say recent, that was a couple of years ago. The Lightning got a rework. The Lightning Strike Fighter in this edition is, and I say this with love, trash. It was 95 points. They've increased it to 125. That's a 30-point increase. The Lightning Strike Fighter has to compete in the same airspace as the Vulture gunship and the Thunderbolt. The Thunderbolt Heavy Fighter has 2 las cannons, 8 autocannon shots, because it's got 2 twin heavy autocannons, and in addition to its wing-mounted weapons, where it can bring 4 Hell Strikes, 6 Sky Strikes, or a couple of bombs. The Lightning Strike Fighter has 2 las cannons, just like the Thunderbolt, and a long barrel autocannon, which is 2 shots, and it does D3 damage rather than 2 damage on the autocannon. It's pointless. It doesn't receive any bonus when it shoots at flying targets. It's just mediocre, and is not worth being taken over a Thunderbolt. If you want to use it in an air-to-ground roll, you're better off using a Vulture because it's cheaper. If you want to use it in an Omni roll, you're better off taking the Thunderbolt because the Thunderbolt is better. Well, now, the Thunderbolt, we're jumping ahead of the list, it's all the way at the bottom of the vehicle at the Astra Militarum unit's continued list, is also 125 points now. Before, the lovely Thunderbolt was 100. So, the Thunderbolt was 5 points more than the Lightning, and the Lightning still wasn't worth it. Now, that's obviously not including, weapons and war gear. But even at the price where you could actually, legitimately field them by taking their minimum war gear, the Lightning wasn't worth it, and it was still cheaper than the Thunderbolt. Well, now, the base cost is the same. There's no reason for it. The Lightning is just objectively worse. It has fewer wounds. It doesn't repair itself. Its guns are trash. Why did this happen? And this is my personal bugbear, and yes, I am going to get a little bit off track on this one. I field 2 Thunderbolts in my list, and I've just seen my list go up by 50 points in the base cost alone. But what really makes me scratch my head on this is, why did the Lightning come up? Because the Lightning is trash even at its price range. Even with the increase to the Thunderbolt, I would be hard-pressed to figure out whether or not I wanted to take a Lightning. And if I did decide to take the Lightning, I would only take it because its Hellstrike option would probably be cheaper than the Thunderbolt's option. This is a mind-blowing change on why they would do this, and really tells you that the people who did this balance check had no idea what they were doing. Now, maybe this is because I'm a flyer player. I field a lot of flyers. I've been fielding flyers for months since 8th edition dropped. Yes, I understand that early on in 8th edition people were spamming the hell out of them. I've never quite gone to that crazy extreme of having 7 flyers in a list and just that. But the fact that the Lightning is now priced at the same price point on the hull basis as the T-Bolt makes no sense. Even just going by a stat line perspective, the Thunderbolt is a superior fighter, yet the Lightning costs the same. This irritates me quite a bit because it just tells me they didn't care, they didn't pay any attention to it, they just threw it out there and said, hey, what the hell, let's see what happens. It's quite clearly aimed at nerfing all of Forge World. We're going through this list, and unit after unit after unit that's good receives outlandish increases in price. And units that are mediocre or not really used, they get a little bit of a price buff. I don't understand this at all. And this whole show is just a nightmare. This is painful in the extreme. Now, maybe it's just because I'm a flyer player, and I'm more than willing to admit it's because I'm a flyer player. But that change alone makes Chapter Approved seem like such a crappy thing. And the fact that there's so many changes in this list, it's just mind-boggling how you made a codex just a couple of months ago, and half of the codex needs to be rewritten. Now I get we're on the Imperial Armor section, but still, this is just, it's lazy and shoddy design. It indicates that the left hand was not talking to the right. Moving on. The Manticore Battery was 80 points. It is now 110. We've gone up 30 points. Was the Manticore worth going up 30 points? No. Because the Manticore Battery in the Forge world is not the same Manticore Battery that you get to mount on the vehicle. They are two very different things, and they are not comparable. The Medusa Carriage Battery was 80 points, is now 100 points. Went up 20 points. Why? Is it somehow better than the Mobile Medusa? Not really. Primaris Redoubt we already talked about. Rapier Laser Destroyer was 70, now is 80, so even fewer people will bring this thing. It was an interesting concept. You had a ground-based thing that guardsmen would man. It looked very cool on the table. I liked to have it, but 10 points more, and it's just another screw you to Forge World. The Salamander Command Vehicle, this is my friend's little bugbear that he came out of this one with, was 75 points, is now 110. I get that this improves ballistic skill of a unit by one, a single vehicle by one ballistic skill, but tossing in weapons, this unit will cost an additional 25 points for that. So it's actually 135 points. You can buy a Manticore for that. Why? It wasn't that good. Between the hull-mounted bolter and the pintle-mounted bolter you were spending 100 points on this thing. And now you're spending... God, you're spending 135 points on it. This makes no sense at all. Why this would go so far in this direction. Salamander command vehicles weren't fielded that much. I get they were used as battlefield support for your super heavies, but this is yet another baffling change. They weren't that good, and now they're even worse. Stygius Destroyer Tank Hunters, 160 points down from 170. This is just way too little. The Stygius Destroyer Tank Hunter needs to be dropped to like 120, 130, especially with the grinding advanced rule that is now on Layman Russes. It is just a vastly overpriced piece of crap. Like, there is no reason to ever bring it. I get that it's Tank Hunter and it gets to reroll wounds, but this is worthless. This makes no sense at all. Why would you ever field this? It looks like it's nice because you're getting a 10-point price buff, but then you look at it in comparison to the rest of the Imperial Guard armor line, and it's like, there is no reason to ever bring this vehicle. The Vanquisher is a better tank than that. Tarantula Battery is 20 points. It used to be 10 points, so up 10 points, and if you look down here at the Astra Militarum War Gear, the Defense Searchlight, which is the reason you take it, I think it was on this, or maybe it's a Saber Weapon Battery, is up to 10 points too. And the Thunderbolt Heavy Fighter we addressed is now 25 points more expensive, which is my personal anger and hatred. Autocannons, again, 12 points. 3-point reduction. You might have some fun with it. And this is the other huge part, because I'm the flyer player and I bring a Thunderbolt equipped with Hellstrike missiles. The Hellstrike missile is 30 points up from 20. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. So the Hellstrike missile is Strength 8, AP -2, D6 damage, roll 2d6 for the damage, and pick the highest result. It used to cost 20 points. At 20 points, it was kind of worth it. There was a reason to take that over a twin missile launcher mount, for example. The Layman Russ Vanquisher turret is now 20 points. Is a single shot, just like the Hellstrike. Is Strength 8, just like the Hellstrike. Is AP -3, better than the Hellstrike. And is roll 2d6, take the highest for damage, same as the Hellstrike. It is 10 points cheaper. An objectively better piece of equipment, which for free, because of the turret that it is mounted on, will shoot twice, is 10 points cheaper than a Hellstrike missile. Why? This makes 0 sense to anybody. This is a straight-up nerf to anybody who's trying to pick flyers, because this will affect the Valkyrie gunship from the normal guard codex. And anybody who thinks otherwise, you're wrong here, because if you look at the first page of the price changes, which I don't actually have here, it specifically says that you are to take these on a faction basis. And because it is Astra Militarum war gear, even though it's in the Forge World section, it will affect the entire Astra Militarum. So if you run Imperial Guard Valkyries, you now have to pay 30 points for your Hellstrikes instead of the 20 points. This doesn't make sense. This is a flat-out moronic change. And I don't understand it. And it angers me because it is a completely useless nerf to a unit that was barely viable. You've basically removed it from existence for no reason at all. I am just so incredibly frustrated with Games Workshop. If this is real, which, hey, we're looking at actual pictures of an actual book, then what the hell were they thinking? Deathcor Krieg Command Squad, 7 points. The reason that these are all in here is purely so they can give it the double asterisk. If models form a heavy weapons team, there is no additional point cost. And also double asterisk for engineer squads, storm squads, for the plasma gun nerf, which is plasma guns, if you are ballistic skill of 3, you have to pay 12 points for it. Whereas if you are ballistic skill 4, you have to pay 7 points for it. Now, whether or not this means that the Krieg Command Squad may now take heavy weapons teams, or if it's just to apply to plasma, is unclear, and is yet another example of Games Workshop doing shoddy work when writing these books. And hey, G-dubs, I love you guys. I've been playing your game for years. I very much enjoy it, but why you gotta do this? Why do you gotta put such little effort into making things clear? One of these should have been a single asterisk, one of these should have been a double asterisk, there would have been no question at all, and if you wanted to put a triple asterisk where it applied to both, that would have made things clear. But you didn't do that. Hell, does this mean that Renegade Disciple Squads get the heavy weapons team thing? I don't know. It isn't clear in this book. And that's a problem. They're going to need an FAQ for what is essentially a collection of FAQs to add it on to the 2 FAQs which attach to the designer notes. We're just going into levels. Deathcor Krieg Warrior, Autocannon, yes, we get that. The Meltagun, that changed. The Plasma Gun change is now applied to them so that they no longer get to cheat a little bit. Because up until just recently, when the last FAQ came out and they had some point changes, they did not include this. And so Deathcor Krieg players still got to bring engineer squads with a 7-costed Plasma Gun. Which I did, because it was funny. I did it once, and then we all agreed at my club that we're not doing that again. Not because they were particularly horrifically powerful, just because we both agreed, yeah, we're trying to, prep for tournament here, so let's try and prep for what will happen at the tournament. Power Fist went down 8 points, we know this. The Storm Armor and Plow Mine is 10 points. Twin Heavy Stubbers is 8, which makes perfect sense. The Heavy Stubber is 8 points anyway, or 4 points anyway, so 2 of them would be 8. And the Vanquisher Battle Cannon, again, is 20 points, which, when compared to the Hellstrike missile, makes no bloody sense. Elysian Command Squads and Elysian Veteran Squads have the double asterisk, which could mean they can form heavy weapons teams, or it could mean that they can take the Plasma Gun. I don't know. It's not clear. The price change didn't actually change in this section. It's the same 7 points, which really disappoints my good friend who is a Deathcor Krieg player and was really hoping that with the introduction of Doctrines, Deathcor Krieg would see a significant price reduction and most of their special abilities tossed into the Doctrine. He wasn't expecting them to drop down to normal levels, but he was hoping. And so that did not happen, quite obviously. And the Elysian Drop Troop Wargear, we've been over this. We're not going to go into Renegades, Heretics, although the Malefic Lord is up to 80 points from 30. So if you've been complaining about that, congratulations, G-Dubs heard you, and at the same time, they absolutely gutted your guard. Final thoughts on this? This is crap. This is lazily written, this is poorly balanced, and this is clearly made with an eye to neuter Forge World. Now, yes, Games Workshop and Forge World are technically under the same company umbrella. We get that. But they maintain separate balance sheets. They maintain a separate culture of a separate corporation. Technically, they are 2 different things. And Chapter Approved is quite clearly aimed at taking the legs out from under Forge World. I've looked through the rest of this book. The G-Dub stuff gets improved. If you're an AdMech player, this is the greatest thing since Sliced Call. This is amazing. Because all of your point costs for a lot of your big units went down. Your infantry went down by a point. It's fantastic. I've got an AdMech friend who's a player. I got I got a friend who's an AdMech player. This is going to be absolute rejoicing when he finally sees this, because everything that he has went down. And just more proof that Games Workshop really doesn't seem to know what the hell it's doing. In the Warhammer community post about teasing for Chapter Approved, they said Call was going to go up in points, along with Big G, Celestine, and a whole bunch of others. Call went down 10 points in this book. He flat out has gone down 10 points. Chapter Approved is an absolute joke, and I am furious about it. But because I like playing in tournaments, I'm going to have to use it. I've just seen my army alone go up 111 points. 111 points. That is a point from which I don't think I can save my list. And that was the list that I was using last time. I had recently added in a couple of Earthshaker carriages because I thought that they were going to be a little bit more effective than my tanks. I was getting all excited for it. I mean, they got sold out, which was a problem, so it was going to be hard looking for them, but even using my old list, my point cost has gone up 111 points, and yet I haven't gotten anything for it. And my list was by no means a cheese list or insanely unbalanced. These changes here don't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. Yes, it's nice autocannons have gone down. Yes, that change was needed. Probably something else is going to be needed to save it. Yes, it's great Power Fists went down. Not a whole lot of people are going to field them anyway because they're not good on guard. But this is... the changes to all of the vehicles, especially the Forge World vehicles, and especially the flyers, just make no goddamn sense. The Hellstrike missile is 10 points more than an objectively better gun, on a unit which can shoot it twice, that is tougher at toughness 8 compared to toughness 7. The whole thing just seems like a big middle finger to guard. Now, I've only skimmed through the rest of the section, but I also hear Chaos is not having a good time with this either. Who the hell came up with these balance changes? Because it really doesn't feel like the same people who made the Guard FAQ and the Guard Codex came up with this list. Because Conscripts were already nerfed into the ground. And here, they added an additional point to cost. A Conscript is Ballistic Skill, Weapon Skill 5, with a leadership of 4. A normal Guardsman is also 4 points, with a leadership of 7, and a Weapon Skill, Ballistic Skill of 4. Why? Why is any of this like this? It really seems like whoever wrote this had no idea how the Guard plays, and was just looking to stick it to them. I have constantly been talking to other people saying, no, GW doesn't hate the Guard, there's nothing against us, but after reading this is absurd. And I am completely and utterly incensed. I got this late last night, and I am not happy. I am not happy at all to see so many changes, upsetting a balance which really wasn't all that bad. Guard players were not top of the heap. If you actually look at the statistics, it was chaos. And now we've just seen a lot of our Forge World stuff gutted. I'll grant you that tournaments have been looking at banning Forge World, but it really wasn't for a lot of the Guard stuff. It's been for chaos stuff like the Malefic Lords. But this is just... it's taking a sledgehammer to something that really required a scalpel. There is no finesse to these changes. There is no intelligence to these changes. It's broad strokes to a problem that really needed a fine detailed touch. I am absolutely furious about this. I am not happy at all. And maybe in part that's because my list has been so thoroughly gutted by this. But I am just baffled and astounded when I look at it. And I've been talking to my friends about it, and they're saying the same thing. They don't understand these changes. They don't make any sense. What data are they making this from? Games Workshop had better come out with one hell of a good explanation for this. Declare that this is the greatest hoax of all time, or do something to address this, because this is outrageous. I do not understand any of this. The flyer change alone is just incredibly stupid, especially given how easily they've thrown around -1 to hit in other armies. So, anyway, that's been my somewhat out of character review of the Guard section of the leaks for Chapter Approved. I may end up doing more Warhammer stuff in the future, so it may be worth sticking around. If you don't care for this stuff, if you're only here mostly for my Star Trek Command contract, I understand. Sorry, this is a ranty video, but we had to get through this because this is a big change. And hey, if you came here looking for Warhammer stuff, hey, on occasion I may do it. I do mostly tactical games on this channel. Starfleet Command is basically the only thing we play at this point, although we'll probably be branching out in about a month or so after we finish our final campaign for this series. And yeah, so if you like what you've seen, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment. What do you think about these changes? Am I completely overblowing this? Is this are all of these things completely reasonable? If so, please explain to me how. Please tell me how this makes sense. If you're like me and your list has been gutted or changed by this, let me know. I want to hear about this one. Because, frankly, I want to know what the wider community thinks about this. From my perspective, the sky is falling. Maybe from yours, all of this makes sense, and you've got a fantastic view that will tell me why. Maybe it'll be just like my come to Jesus moment when I finally decided to get off my high horse about conscripts and bring them as well. And then, you know, a couple of months later, suddenly GW decided to take the teeth out of them. But, yeah. Tell me what are your thoughts on this, because this is, from my perspective, utterly devastating and completely arbitrary. I've been Tarek. If you like what you've seen, hit the like button, subscribe, bell icon, all that stuff, and I am eager to hear from you guys. See you next time.